Let's talk about Rochelle. So, first, right up front, I think Rochelle is the least successful character I've created, and I can go through and why. And I hate how people talk about her sometimes because it's my fault. It's 100% my fault. But let's kind of visit this, and this is kind of helpful. I'll do the Left 4 Dead 1 characters next week. But so, Rochelle, when we were originally designing her, it was kind of between her and when we say news assistant news producer, we mean somebody who lugs around cables. To be clear, right? She was not an on-camera presence. But then I wanted originally a surly kind of bartender. But I think some people were looking at Coach and like just the physicality of Coach and who I wanted as the surly. I might want the surly DMV. But like we tend to make people very thin, and that's what we do in games. I kind of make fun of that in Anna Cruises that in the future there's just a pill, and boy, when that pill runs out, all the characters are gonna get big and heavy. But I'm not right. So like, but that didn't happen. Whatever. And there's a big back and forth. And I remember we're in a meeting room, and we're talking, and I'm like, hey, here's how I write. I need to have an understanding of the character, and I tend to map it on to either a fictional character or a real person, but like I need to have their thoughts in their head. I'm not going to steal them. I'm not going to like, someone asked if like everyone's based on somebody real. Yes and no. They're based on the idea like I need to sit in that person's shoes for a minute and think, what would I think here? And I find it for me, I'm not that good of a writer, but helpful to have somebody that I know that I can think of. Even if I have it wrong or if I just met the person briefly, it helps. And so I had a bunch of people from my bartending days that I wanted to pull on, but everybody else was really liking this producer. And so I was like, okay, we'll go that route. We'll go that route. That's fine. There's people I can pull on from, and one was the first was a woman I dated briefly when I went to Cleveland State, and I wrote some stuff for her, and one of the lawyers actually came back and was like, hey, I'm uncomfortable with this, how she talks, especially how she talks with Coach, and I'm like, well, like I'm from Cleveland. You maybe watched an episode of Martin once. I'm not trying to make stereotypes. I'm not trying to make this like arch character. I'm trying to make a natural way that the people that I know and how people talk. And that became kind of this weird point. Hold on one second, Boris. Okay, so we had a little bit of a problem of the start of who the character really was. This is before recording. This is before anything. And then I'd also gone to Kent State where there was the theater department and the kind of TV want to go on go on air people were right next to us, and so I was friends with a bunch of those people as well. And so there were some people I know, and I remember like going back to their dorm room and kind of hanging out and just kind of mapping that out and going, okay, this can work. We can do this. And with that, I wanted them to be like they're fans of what they make. Now, if you're an on the air personality, you will yourself to be on the air. Like that's a competitive thing. Like that's a different personality. Where if you're the person lugging the cables around and doing the background stuff, and my God, the chroma keying just to put stuff on the screen back then. Oh, but if you're one of those people, that was just a different beast, right? And you're a different personality, and that's kind of what we wanted out of Rochelle. And so started kind of living in that space, and I thought, well, she'd probably be a big Ron Burgundy fan, right? And now what's his face? Ron Burgundy can just say something like out of the air, and he just like, and he starts real strong and ends real strong. It's just like Will Ferrell's really good at this, right? He can just take the absurd and call it out, and that works really well for doing that, right? And so other people can take things out of the air as well, and they do it differently. Like Liu in the Anacrusis does it, but she does it like this. Like her vocal is like boom, 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 boom. She's just shooting it out there up like this, right? But when we started working with the actress Rochelle Aites, I think I pronounced her last name. I apologize. She's not a voice actor; she's an actress, and she would start and go down and just kind of trail off, or would be like, Now, that's our fault for not catching that in that first session, but that was happening a lot. Hold on. And so, like, her own language of rotten burgundy, just Don sequiturs, was failing. And it was failing a lot for that kind of vocal delivery and stuff. And now one of the problems was I just didn't have a lot to watch of her and get her voice. So right, because I take the character I have, and now I have this character, and I can have kind of like, hey, if this person was in the world, where are they thinking? What are they thinking? I have that, but now I have to match that with where the character goes. Now, some actors do a lot of voices. They do a lot of accents. They have a different control of their range, and that isn't to say like so. Like Nick, you Dylan, has a limited range, but he's that range really hard, right? And it's very easy to write to because you know what that is. Where somebody, both for the Ellis character and for Coach, we have this wider range of what we could pull from because that's how they act and that's kind of their skill set. For Rochelle, she's more of like an LA kind of woman. And I think it comes through in a lot of her. She's a super successful actress. She's on TV right now on the SWAT or something, like for years. So like, it wasn't her, it was me. And it wasn't identifying like that range. And she gave it her all. She marked up the she's the one who made me start delivering scripts like a week early because she wanted to nail the role and we were failing her. But the good thing is, if you notice some of the later sessions and some of the like the DLC and stuff, she's a lot stronger because we had found the character, we'd found her voice, and we had found out how to work with her and watch for that trail off. And again, the trail off, you do it all the time in real life, and you do it all the time in TV and movies, and it is perfectly fine. But for voice acting, it ends up being hard to put things together, and it feels out of place, and it's problematic. I hadn't realized that. I hadn't run into that. So that meant we killed a bunch of her early stuff, and then we never went back and tried to re-record it once we understood how to re-record it and who she was. And we still had that, like, right, the little bit of the beginning, we were already behind the eight ball because we didn't have the big bunch of work because we were still discovering and finding the character with her. And so that, I wish we would have given her a couple more sessions where we just went back through and said, hey, let's revisit this stuff because these were good ideas. These are fun characters. And like, she's named Rochelle because the minute we weren't sure what her name was going to be at first, and then I met Rochelle and I'm like, Rochelle, this is good. This is good. Like, you're good for this. You're good for this. This matches. And then it was just my failure to kind of match that up. So the thing there now is I right away try to take whatever anyone said and hook it up to hear them next to other people. Before we would just wait to do that and we kind of just evaluated it individually. And that became clear of like her, that trailing off is just, right, it's going under and then the next voice is here and it just becomes problematic. I know you should know this, right? I should know this. I did. Okay, apologies. And so where she ends up, I really like, and I like the character, and I like where she ended up, where the source came through, the whole thing coming through. It's just there's still some of her early stuff where it was still struggling with working with her, working with, how we were writing for the character at the time, and all of that. And so it just took a little bit longer to come through and hook up. I would work with her again in a minute. She is talented, and I just pulled up her IMDb here, and yeah, I mean, she has just worked nonstop because she is the amount of work that she put in when she didn't feel it was going well and blaming herself for a game that was only going to be 4 sessions versus these other things that she was working so hard on. Just tells you the kind of person she is and the kind of work that she puts in to the craft of acting. And I let her down. And I feel horrible every single time I think about that. But yeah, there you go. There's Rochelle.